11th regular scheduled meeting, and ask to begin with Mr. Allen. Would you mind with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening. For those in attendance, if you wish to speak during the public hearing or the citizen comment period, please do so by completing the appropriate sign-in sheet at the back of the chambers. Moving on to our next item is the adoption of our meeting agenda. Folks have had an opportunity to review. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I will make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. I'll just mention our mayor's out of town. Our vice mayor is a little under the weather, and so you've got the three of us this evening to contend with, but appreciate your attendance this evening. I don't have any comments on my own, but would extend that opportunity for my colleagues on council if you all have any matters that you'd like to share.
Well, COVID update. You still see my face. We are still in the green on the CDC map, but I will point out, if you look at that map, this week, Albemarle County, Fluvanna County, and Bath County all went back to medium community risk. And so we do not live in a vacuum, and so that's something I'll certainly be keeping an eye on. And again, hopefully they will revert to green rather than more of the area reverts to yellow next week. But stay tuned. They usually update that, I think, on Wednesdays or Thursdays, the CDC. So look for that this week. Otherwise, again, locally, our case count is low. And in looking at the data, it seemed like last week there were no deaths in Augusta County from COVID, which is a great thing that we have gotten to that point. But as I said, with the yellow communities surrounding us, I think that's something we still have to be thoughtful about and thinking about. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. All right, well, moving on to item 6 is consideration of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Here, thank you. Is there a
And
second?
I will second it.
All right. We're going to be really efficient at this, right? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Item 7 is to proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Mr. Hamp.
Thank you, Mr. Short. I'm going to call forward representatives. I'm going to read the proclamation first and then invite some agency representatives to receive the proclamation and then offer some brief remarks about the importance of the occasion of Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is April.
Which one is?
Whereas, regardless of who they are or the circumstances of their birth, all children have the right to safe, secure, and supportive environments free from abuse and neglect. Whereas April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and whereas during Prevention Month, Virginians are reminded of the courage it takes to raise a child, and that all parents have the right to the support and knowledge which child rearing demands. And whereas child abuse is one of our nation's most serious public health problems, with scientific studies documenting the link between child abuse and neglect, and a wide variety of medical, emotional, psychological, and behavioral disorders. And whereas child abuse can disrupt early brain development and serious chronic stress can impair the development of the nervous and immune systems. And whereas children are the foundation of a sustainable and prosperous society, and our prosperity as a state and nation is built on a foundation of healthy child development. And whereas creating communities where families can access an array of supports and resources to address the social, emotional, and physical health needs of their children is the best way to combat child abuse. And whereas the effective child abuse programs succeed because of partnerships created through the Blue Ridge Stop Child Abuse Now, SCAN, and includes Shenandoah Valley Social Services, the Valley Children's Advocacy Center, Blue Ridge Court-appointed special advocates, Valley Community Services Board, and the Office on Youth, schools, faith communities, and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas displaying a pinwheel during the month of April will serve as a positive reminder that together we can prevent child abuse and neglect, and by doing so, keep children safe. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Waynesboro City Council that April 2022 is hereby designated as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the city of Waynesboro, and Waynesboro City Council calls upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live. And this evening we have from the Office on Youth, Ms. Grace DeShong and Ms. Meredith Keppel. From the Children's Advocacy Center, Ms. Charlene Johnson. From Valley Community Services Board, Ms. Amanda DePoy. And from the Blue Ridge CASA, Ms. Leanna Headley. So if the folks who are designated to receive and present would come forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a pinwheel lapel pin that I have on my blue blazer that I don't have tonight.
I believe we shared that a couple years ago.
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
if it's okay to just share a few statistics and information with you all, I won't take up a lot of your time, but just for local information, in the fiscal year 21, there were 1,422 accepted referrals of child abuse or neglect in Waynesboro, Stanton, and Augusta County. Of those referrals, 394 were actually investigated and 173 were actually founded. For Waynesboro, 327 accepted referrals came in and 64 of them were actually investigated. Currently, there are 132 children in foster care in the Stanton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County area. In Waynesboro, 34 of those children make up that number. Currently, there are only 51 approved foster homes through the Department of Social Services. Blue Ridge CASA has worked with over 50 children in the Waynesboro, Stanton, and Augusta County area in the year 2021. The Valley Children's Advocacy Center conducted 236 forensic interviews in 2021. 45 or almost 205 were Waynesboro children. The Office on Youth was able to provide parenting support to 175 parents in the year 2021. So evidence shows that children's early experiences do impact them throughout their life, both positively and negatively. Children raised in safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments are more likely to enjoy good physical and mental health and succeed academically and socially. Children who grow up happy and healthy also go on to contribute to economic prosperity for everyone. So when we invest in healthy child development, we're investing in community. Unfortunately, children are sometimes exposed to extreme and sustained stress, like child abuse and neglect, which can undermine a child's development. The Valley Community Service Board Prevention Services Department offered Understanding Adverse Childhood Experiences, which is named ACEs. And so those trainings locally and statewide through a virtual training, okay? And so between April 1st, 2021 and March 30th of 2022, the prevention services were involved in training 390 people in understanding adverse childhood experiences. In 2008, Prevent Child Abuse America introduced the pinwheel as the new national symbol for child abuse prevention. So through pinwheels for prevention. By its very nature, the pinwheel shows a whimsy and childlike notion. In essence, it has come to serve as the physical embodiment or reminder of the great childhoods we all want for children. So as you'll notice throughout Stanton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County at the libraries, there will be pinwheel displays at our local elementary schools. Your display is out front now as well here at the City Building. The Department of Social Services is putting on a Let's Chalk About Prevention. I have sidewalk chalk in the back for families to do a bright, vibrant picture at their home, take a picture and submit it for a contest. There will also be an event at Klein's in Stanton on April 30th. For those families, they will be serving blue ice cream to represent Child Abuse Prevention Month as well. And they will also announce winners from the sidewalk chalk pictures that get submitted. So just in closing, as a reminder to our community, together we can prevent child abuse because childhood lasts a lifetime. So we thank you very much for proclaiming April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Moving on to item number 8 is to receive a presentation from the school superintendent regarding the school board's recommended fiscal year 2023 budget. Dr. Castle.
Thank you, Mr. Short. You'll see the first slide. I have school board meeting February 8th and city council April 11th. Nothing's changed in the budget since February 8th because we don't have a state budget yet. So you're getting the same presentation the school board saw in February and we discussed again in March. Our budget priorities for fiscal year 23 were employee compensation in order to recruit and retain outstanding educators and support staff. We find ourselves in a place where finding support staff is about as challenging as finding teachers and instructional assistants. And that's a statewide and a nationwide problem in terms of finding outstanding educators. We've been very pleased this year. We've done a really nice job of hiring Dr. Barber since becoming assistant superintendent in December, has been hiring as diligently as he can, and I think we're getting ahead of some other divisions and being able to have some good hires, so we're pleased by that. We have a second budget priority, and that is we've developed a biennial budget for our federal pandemic funds in order to use those effectively and efficiently to do two things. One, address social, emotional, behavioral, academic needs of our students, the learning recovery. Our students' schools closed in March of 2020. We came back in August in a hybrid model. Well, actually, we didn't come back in the hybrid model until about October, and then had a hybrid model last year. So our students, many of them were virtual for a year and a half. Others had very few days in school, and I think we all acknowledge the stress of the pandemic on adults and children alike, and we're continuing to see not only learning loss and academic effects from that, but particularly at the middle and high school, I would say, social, emotional, and behavioral needs as well. And at the elementary, maybe not as significant there. And the second part of that is to use federal funds to replace HVAC systems, doors and windows at Berkeley, Glen, Winona, and Wayne Hills. All of that improves air quality. Those are the three buildings with the oldest heating and air systems. The original systems at Berkeley, Glen, and Winona, so those are 50 years old. The governor's proposed budget, which was proposed by Governor Northam in December, does have significant additional state funding. It does not seem as though Governor Youngkin has proposed huge differences to this budget. The Senate version of the budget does provide a few more funds, I say a few, guess it's all relative, a couple $100,000, which most years would have been a significant amount of money, but less so this year in the state budget. But the Senate version does provide more funding for us. The House budget doesn't, but it's because the House budget treats school construction and renovation differently and lays that out over a longer period of time. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The state refers to it as compensation supplement. There is money for the state's share of a 5% raise for SOQ covered instructional and support positions. Standard of quality covered positions are the positions that the state says you must have to provide a minimum standard of quality of instruction. You can't do that based on what they say. All school divisions have probably double that amount. We're about 50%, just a little less of our positions are covered under the SOQ. And so the state doesn't recognize all those additional positions. And then they apply the composite index to that to adjust for relative wealth. So actually when they talk about a 5% raise, they're providing us with about 43% of the funds to do a 5% raise. I don't want to sound unappreciative, but it's not all there. We're making up for it with other state funds or with local funds. There's additional money for the VPI, Virginia Preschool Initiative, and early childhood education. I think that continues to be a focus in the state. We're very proud of our pre-K center and the opportunities there for 3 and 4-year-olds. So I think we're doing a good job with that, and we'll relish the opportunity to have some more funding. To support students with programs such as at-risk, special ed, prevention, intervention, remediation, English as a second language, and early reading intervention. All of those programs for at-risk students or groups of students who typically need additional support and resources have additional funding this year. And then finally, there is money to support school construction and renovation. That's new in the state budget. In the 15 years I've been working with school division budgets, we've not had those funds. And it's almost $2 million, $1,982,000 that would be intended to be spent over the biennium. I want to talk just a minute about our student demographics. We have just over 3,000 students at 3,016. 2,851 of those are K-12, so they're counted in the average daily membership by DOE. 4-year-olds are funded a little differently, as are 3-year-olds. We're a very diverse school system. 50% white, 20% Hispanic, 17% black. 11% of our students identify as 2 or more races, and other, being Pacific Islanders, Asian and Native American comprise the final 2%. So we're right on a majority school division. And that's as of September 30th. We report that for September 30th and March 30th, but we've not generated the March 30th reports yet. Economically disadvantaged, I used to talk with you about what our free and reduced lunch rates were. Waynesboro is and has been for the last 3 or 4 years a community eligibility provision city, which means we don't collect free and reduced lunch applications. Our free and reduced lunch rate was high enough that the USDA deemed that it was not productive or efficient to collect applications, so we had to go through a process to be declared community eligible, but all of our students receive free breakfast and free lunch each day. That increases the participation and increases our reimbursement from USDA, so it actually helps the operating budget of the school nutrition. Our estimate would be that around 2/3 of our students are economically disadvantaged if you use the free and reduced lunch criteria, but we don't have any way of knowing that. Students with disabilities, we have 371 students with individual education plans and 185 students with Section 504 plans. Section 504 plans are more medically and health related plans to assure that students have accommodations or the resources they need to be successful. 258 English language learners representing 9 languages spoken. So in addition to providing services for those students, we also provide translation services for the families in terms of parent-teacher conferences or any communications with the schools. We, in February, when I presented, had 37 students identifying as homeless. That was consistent with the 40 students that were identified as homeless last year, and 19 students in foster care. I know that differs a bit from the number you just heard. I'll offer a couple explanations, and somebody else is welcome to chime in on this. It might be called the best determination of where a student in foster care attends school. So it might be that they're in foster care in Waynesboro, but still attending a school in the county. Is that somewhat accurate? And then the other factor would be, it could be children not old enough to attend school yet that are in foster care. And it may be more than 19 students today than when we put this slide together. So let me talk about the summary of the state revenue. Our increased state revenue is over $3 million, $3,132,000. $1,300,000 of that is the standard of quality programs, and that's some of the programs that I just talked about, like remediation, prevention, and that's also where basic aid is funded. So we receive an allocated amount based on our ADM, our average daily membership, in just basic aid to be used for whatever is needed to run the school system. Under incentive programs, the lion's share of that money is the compensation supplement. And it's an incentive program because we don't get that money from the state unless we give the 5% raise and provide our share. And there are other incentive programs like that where we have to do a match to the state in order to receive the funds. Because of our composite index, though, it's very favorable, and we try to take advantage of all of those programs. Then we have lottery-funded programs. Apparently, while people were being bored during the pandemic, they played the lottery more because we've got $344,000 of additional lottery funds, and then some other state revenue. Our federal revenues increase also by $767,000. Our traditional federal funds, Title I, Title II, Title III, up through Title VI, that we always receive, have gone up by $66,000. All of those programs are based on the number of students being served, and so the number of students increase in those programs, the funding increases. But the bulk of that federal funding is CARES Act money that we'll spend on programs, resources, personnel, other than the construction money that I talked about. So there's just over $700,000 of CARES Act money in the 2023 budget. Other funds are funds that we generate as a school system, things like facility rental, rebates, refunds, reimbursements from other school systems for tuition. Medicaid is a large one, E-rate. If we have insurance settlements, get insurance checks, that would be revenue that we've generated. And that increased as well to $87,000. And then the big one, and of interest to you, I'm sure, is the local funding, which increased $772,000. That's based on our revenue sharing agreement, the funding formula applied to the audited FY21 comprehensive audited financials report. That's a historic amount of money since at least I've been here for the last 9 years. Thank you. This summarizes, as you'll see, state, I think there should be a little red button on here. There it is. State, federal, I've talked about these. What's different is we used to would have totaled right here, but we broke out construction and renovation funds because if I include those funds, which is $8 million, it really makes the operating budget look inflated, but those funds have to be spent in the next 2 years. That's the biennial budget that I talked about in the first slide. The state funds we're allowed to carry them from FY23 to FY24, June 30th of 2024, as part of the biennial budget. And the federal CARES Act dollars for school systems have to be spent by September of 2024. I believe as a municipality, you get until 2026 to spend yours. Is that correct? So we keep lobbying to treat us like you treat the municipalities, but we'll take it when we get it, and we've got a plan to spend it. So that $8 million is represented separately, but you see the total. Our budget's gone from $42 million to $55 million for the next year. In expenditure summaries, salaries have increased. We're providing an average 6.5% raise for our employees. Not everybody gets 6.5%. Some people get more than 6.5%. But on average, it's about 6.5%. That depends on where you are on the pay scale and the number of years experience you have in the scale that you're on. We worked very hard to increase our starting salary and the salary, particularly of our teachers, in the mid-range from about year 8 through 18. We were lagging behind our neighbors in compensation in those areas. We were faring much better at the top of the pay scale, and so there's a less percent raise there. A higher salary, even though smaller percent, is the same number of dollars. We have increased our starting teacher salary to over $46,000 for our masters. Increased compensation for our support staff. We did in fact adopt in December and implemented in January a new salary scale for instructional assistants and for substitutes. And that made a pretty significant difference in the ability to hire substitute teachers, which we had struggled with first semester. And they were going to end up making more than our aides if we hadn't adjusted the aide scale at the same time. And our aides have done remarkable work during the pandemic, serving many, many days as the teacher in the classroom. We've added 4 contract days for instructional aides so that they're able to attend in-service alongside of our teachers and know what programs we're implementing or the latest instructional techniques. That in effect provides them 4 additional days of compensation and an additional day for our bus drivers. We've also begun to address coaching stipends and extracurricular stipends, things like club sponsors. We had not addressed those for a decade at least, since the Great Recession. Since I've been here in 9 years, we've done very little work on the coaching and other supplements. We've still got some work to do there, but we've started to increase those as well. And we also add 15 positions to support student needs. Again, for social, emotional, behavioral, and also instructional purposes. Some of these are instructional assistants. We've actually hired 2 additional school psychologists already and an additional school social worker. And I believe tomorrow night we'll hire 1 or 2 additional school counselors. Is that right, Dr. Berber? So a lot around the social and mental health aspects of that. The folks we have now work long hours every day and into the weekends. It's been a pretty taxing year for the mental health and psychologists and social worker folks. When you increase salaries, benefits increase because they're a percentage of the salaries generally. So benefits increased over $500,000, $576,000. And then the non-salary increase, material supplies and just purchase services, just general increase of cost of materials would be $221,000. One of our HVAC grants requires a 25% match. So in order to get the $1.5 million, that's federal money that flowed through the state, we had to match it with $545,000 from the operating. So that's the $545,000 to match an HVAC grant that will be used for construction. Construction funds I talked about total over $8 million, and we'll expend that $8 million. I've already talked about there's a 2-year spend down on those. We actually will start in May. Actually did some work over spring break, but in May replacing all the doors and windows at Berkeley Glen and new HVAC system. And in order to put in the new heating and air system, we've got to take out the ceilings. So we'll put in new LED lighting and drop new ceiling tile at the same time, all by August 1st. That's going to be about $4.5 million. The bid's $4,250,000, but there's some hidden costs always in construction, so it'll be about $4.5 million. The following year, in summer of 2023, we plan to do the same for Winona. There are fewer windows and doors, so it won't be as expensive. And we'll upgrade the HVAC system at Wayne Hills. Wayne Hills has mostly new windows and doors. We may have to do some windows on one wing, but most of that was done in the renovation in 2010 or 11 when it opened as a pre-K center. So by the end of summer of 2023, we should have all of our schools, with the exception of the 70s wing of the high school, with modern HVAC systems. We put new chillers in at Westwood and William Perry last January. Those were 25 years old and failing. So I think we're going to be in a really good place in terms of capital by the end of summer 2023, or certainly by 2024. Here's a breakdown of salaries, benefits, non-salary by percentages. I will call your attention over here to these percentages. If you take out this 15% of that total for the construction, most years salaries and benefits run about 80% of the total budget, and non-salary runs about 20%, and that's true for all school divisions. Somewhere between about 77 and 83% is salaries and benefits. If you take the construction funds out of here, the salary and benefits are 79%, and the non-salary is 21%. So it's pretty consistent with previous years. I guess the point there is, as we've increased our funding, I think we've used it proportionally to address salaries, benefits, positions, and non-salary. It's been a lot of work gone into this budget. Ms. Hutchinson's office and everyone else in the school board office, Dr. Barber and others. There's the total of revenues and expenditures, and here's the good news. This is my 9th trip down. I've never had a balanced budget before. And I'm liking this just okay. It'll be fine. We'll do it again next year, I hope. There's a lot of funding there. We're trying to spend it properly, but I don't have any ask today. Now, if you've got extra dollars laying around, we can help you with those. We want to be a partner. I'm going to read this. I know you can read, but our budget summary: professional, caring, supportive, talented personnel are the single most important factor in an outstanding school division. Waynesboro Public Schools has these outstanding employees, and WPS must take care of our employees as they care for our children. Employee compensation will remain a priority, with an average 6.5% raise this year and a goal of providing the same next year. Students must have their basic needs of shelter and food met, feel safe and secure, and have their physical and mental health needs met before they are able to access the excellent educational opportunities provided for them. Waynesboro Public Schools must take care of our children so they can learn, meeting whatever needs they may have. State, federal, and local funds are used to provide personnel, services, and supplies necessary to provide a safe and quality educational environment and experience for all students through the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. I think Dr. Hostetter made a really good point and segued into this nicely. We're not out of the pandemic yet. We're in a better place, certainly, but we're still in a pandemic. This budget is a balanced budget with large increases in state, federal, and local funding. It supports increased compensation for our employees, supports expanded programs that address the significant and diverse student needs, supports installation of new HVAC systems in 3 buildings with the oldest systems, and finally, is contingent on the final state budget maintaining the proposed level of funding. I would offer only this comment: from what we see from the school side of the legislature and the Senate budget and the House budget, it may be that it seems that the House of Representatives would propose, rather than to put the construction and renovation money in the operating budget and send it to us that way, they would prefer to do it through some type of more of an application or grant process, a process outside of the operating budget, but still providing construction and renovation funds. I think both sides of the legislature acknowledge the needs, as it just talked about, 50-year-old heat systems that just don't work anymore. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll adjust accordingly, and it's part of why we've broken construction out. I don't think that's going to impact the rest of the operating part, and if we have to change our plan down the road, we can do that. But I'm hopeful that the money comes. I don't really care if it comes in the operating budget or another vehicle. Thank you. Appreciate your support of our schools. Happy to answer any questions or hear any comments.
Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Castle.
Yeah, great
Thank you.
presentation, and I would just offer that I'm so proud of our partnership that we have with our school division and our school board administration. It's so exciting to see the continued and progressive improvements to our amazing staff that we have, faculty, administrators, to be able to do that, and that that requires, because this funding occurs year for last, is that it maintains making difficult decisions year after year in order to hopefully set us up for success. I think a lot of times I tell folks that democracy and city governance and state governance, any kind of governance, is really like a gardener sowing the seeds to a garden that they may never see the harvest for, but it's so exciting to see the progress that y'all are making.
And I've often said, a thriving city has a thriving school division, and I think our city is thriving. The growth in the city's pretty incredible right now, both commercially and residentially. Our student population enrollment is increasing. That's not surprising, because you know how many new homes are going up around the city, and I'd like to think the school division's part of that. People are coming here for a lot of different reasons, but I think our school system's one of them. So Thank you again.
Thank you so much. All right, item 9 is to hold a public hearing on budget ordinances amending the fiscal year 2022 budget in the amount of $2,187,049. Mr. Ham.
Yes, sir. So items, items 9, 10, and 11 are all related to one another. Item 9 is the explanation and the public hearing aspect of the introduction and adoption of items in number 11, and the introduction and just simply the introduction for item number 10. So a public hearing is necessary because collectively the two appropriations change the city's budget by more than 1%, and under the Code of Virginia, if that's the case, then we're obligated to have a public hearing simply to alert folks to the fact that we have a pretty significant change contemplated. These are all school funds. Some involve the appropriation of school fund balance to the school operating fund. I think it's similar to the explanation or the presentation that Dr. Castle offered. These fund balance dollars will be used to match a grant to upgrade building hardware and software, and in fact they match a CARES HVAC grant. And that's item 10, and item 10 has a value of $673,905. Item 11 is a collection of various grant dollars, and you'll be able to introduce, discuss, and adopt these ordinances, and they involve Title 9A funds, Title I funds, adult literacy, Title II, CARES, Title IV, and year-round school planning. And so this evening we'll have a public hearing, introduce the appropriation for item 10, introduce second, discuss item 11, and vote on item 11. And if you have specific questions, I'm happy to go into greater detail, or call on Dr. Castle to go into greater detail.
Since he's here.
So, Mr. Short, if you want to proceed to the public hearing.
I will open up the public hearing. Do we have anyone here to speak?
We do not.
All right, I will close the public hearing and go for the motion for 9 through 11 is what I'm hearing.
Actually, it's
It's 9,
with
then 10.
number 10, and number 10 has a value of $673,905, and this is the appropriation of the school fund's fund balance to the operating fund to match that grant.
Right, and so do you, there's not a public hearing required for that one?
We just held the public hearing. That public hearing that
It even
was
grossed
held
all-
applies to both of these, to 10 and 11. So at this
Right.
point, introduce, second, and discuss this, set it aside for the next meeting, and then on item 11, introduce, discuss, and vote.
Gotcha. Do I have a motion to introduce?
I will introduce the motion of number 10.
Second?
Motion for number 11.
Number 11, okay.
Well, we just need a second.
I'll do the second one.
Okay. And so we will consider at our next meeting.
Let's discuss, or at least afford an
Is there a
opportunity for discussion.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the 25th, right?
Correct.
And then, for number 11.
Introduce number 11.
Great, thank you.
And I will second.
Great, any discussion?
Mr. Hamilton.
This one says it can be adopted this evening.
Correct.
Okay, so, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, good.
Excellent.
All right, number 12, I'm glad we got the math done. Item 12 is to consider appointing a candidate to the Library Board of Trustees.
Ms. Emily Bardine is presented for your consideration. This would be to serve an unexpired 4-year term that concludes on August 31st, 2025.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Second?
And I will second that nomination.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Item 13 is communication, correspondence, and calendar.
I don't have anything this evening.
Okay. Number 14 brings us to citizen comment period. Anybody?
Yes, Ms. Evelyn Cotton.
Good evening, Ms. Cotton. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
No problem. Good
And
evening.
we've got the little timer. I think you're familiar with it.
Yes, I won't need all that. Evelyn Cotton, I'm at 720 14th Street in the fine city of Waynesboro, Virginia. And thank you all for doing such a wonderful job. I should have carried on last time about what a wonderful job you're doing. I only wanted to bring up one point, and that is that there is a very dilapidated house on North Delphine Avenue, and I'm not sure what the protocol is, what the process is, but I wanted to make sure that somebody's aware of it because it really should have some do not cross tape around it or something, because I think we're kind of setting ourselves up for somebody could really be injured seriously because there's no restriction to access to the house. It's literally falling down. You guys seem to be aware of it? Okay, all right, that was all I needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, sir.
If you could maybe speak to the status of that structure, and 'cause I think it's
Sure.
good news for the community.
It is good news. It is subject to enforcement, and the city has concluded the procurement to engage a contractor to effect first abatement of asbestos and then accomplish the demolition and removal. Your observation is an apt one. I actually was in the neighborhood today and had a similar concern that it's not quarantined or fenced off, and it is somewhat of a hazard. So I will mention the concern to the building official and see if demolition is imminent, we may simply proceed. If it doesn't appear to be scheduled or imminent, I'll make an inquiry about safety provisions. But thank you for your concern.
Yeah, the delays largely been for the abatement. But. All right, with that, we have a closed session scheduled.
We do.
Okay. So do we have the
Text.
for the?
You have, I have, it's on, if you, 30-second timeout.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Well, you know what, Mike, if you want, I could probably just.
So I have it printed off, or if Mr.
Yeah,
Wood was
maybe
in
you
the
could
body,
want to try to go off of that. We have a motion to go into closed session. It's in a larger yellow highlighted. call that we go into
Okay.
closed session authorized by.
So I call that staff has requested a closed session authorized by Section 2.2-3711A8 and -3711A29 of the Virginia Code in order to discuss the award of public contracts involving the expenditure of public funds and to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by our attorney.
Great, and that's in the form of a motion.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Gonna ask the question here too, is, do I have a second?
Second.
It requires a roll call vote.
Councilman Allen? Councilman Short?
Aye.
Councilman Hospital?
Aye.
We're in closed session. To come out of closed session.
Mr. Mayor, I move this meeting be
Is that right?
reconvening. Here we go. I move to adopt the following resolution, whereas the City Council has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the City Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with the Virginia law, and now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Waynesboro hereby certifies to the best of each member's knowledge the only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies. And second, that only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the City Council of Waynesboro.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Oh, second.
It requires a roll call vote.
Councilman Allen?
Aye.
Councilman Short?
Aye.
Councilman Hostetter?
Aye.
We are back into open session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Aren't you glad you stayed for that?
Yeah.